Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the Terrace Rotary Club is putting on their annual auction. The BC NDP held their first caucus meeting after their election win, and we'll have a look at how the U.S. is looking right before their election.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. This weekend, the 64th edition of the online TV auction will be underway, put on by the Rotary Club of Terrace at the Sportsplex Banquet Room. Various items will be on display on Saturday, November 2nd from 5 to 10 p.m., as well as on Sunday the 3rd from 1 to 9 p.m. Pre-bidding opened up last Friday night and will be open until all the items are sold. Those items are also listed on the organization's website, but to be eligible to be a credible bidder, you must have a bidder ID number from last year or send an email to auction@terracerotary.org. The event will also be live streamed on Facebook, and the club can take auctions virtually by calling 778-634-3501. A recent proposal from the Kitimat Chamber of Commerce suggested that moving the Heritage Park Amphitheater to a different location so that it can be used a bit more frequently was rejected by Kitimat Council. This decision came from councillors despite the fact that the theater has dealt with various issues like limited power and highway noise since it was finished being built in 2020. The thought was most likely to move the structure to the local fairgrounds, with the Snowflake Community Fairgrounds Society offering to facilitate the move by recovering its cost. But ultimately, council believed that keeping it in place was the best course of action, in part because of the cost of moving, and then they told their staff to work with the Chamber of Commerce on ways to increase its usage as is. The Terrace Little Theater is gearing up for a new show. The group will be presenting It's a Wonderful Life on air, a Canadian stage reinvention of the 1947 movie story that has actors presenting the show as a period radio broadcast, complete with songs, live sound effects, and holiday jingles. CFTK's Jaylene Matthews caught up with the production crew to see how everything is shaping up.
Paint is going on and preparations are underway to transform the Terrace Little Theater into a 1950s radio station.
So you're going to get an interesting experience where you have actors playing other actors, and you have a trained artist doing all the sound effects, steps or shoes on stairs, bells ringing, guns going off, car engines, all kinds of sound effects that are all done with all kinds of various objects. So that becomes a play within a play itself, what's happening with the sound effect. And then you have the music, the piano and the singers. So there's a lot going on. Be very entertaining. And then it's a Christmas story, one of the most beloved films ever. Yeah.
This will be the second show the Terrace Little Theater has put on since their COVID hiatus.
Well, yeah, I was ASM on our last show, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, so this is going to be a lot different because we don't have as many backstage parts. It's all on stage, so planning all of that has been interesting and lots of fun.
The audience can expect live sound effects and music.
The jingles have a familiar ring to them, so all the little commercial jingles, you'll go, oh, I think I've heard that tune before. They're just fun and upbeat. I have the privilege of working with Karen Shaw Carter and Amber Zanon and Amanda Ramsey as our three female singers who are sort of going Andrews Sisters style to fit in with the time period.
So it's a very kind of immersive experience. The audience comes in and it actually becomes quite involved in being because they're an audience being an audience.
The show runs between November 28th and December 15th with 7 p.m. showtimes and 2 p.m. matinee. For CFTK News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Premier David Eby and the NDP held their first caucus meeting on the heels of a razor-thin election victory, and there were a lot of new faces at said meeting. CTV's Rob Buffum has more on what was an historic gathering.
A flood of fresh faces arrived for the NDP's first caucus meeting since the election. 18 of them, more than a third of the 47 MLA elects, are new to the job.
We've been watching each other's campaigns, and so it's really nice to be in the room together now.
In the room, the man of the hour, Gary Begg, subject to a pending recount. His late surge in Surrey Guildford, fueled by mail-in and absentee ballots, catapulted him to a win in the 47th seat, giving the NDP the narrowest of majorities and earning him a new nickname.
Comeback kid and all the usual ones that are expected.
This caucus is remarkable for its composition, featuring a record 65% women, part of a BC legislature that for the first time has more women than men.
The whole caucus reflects the diversity of British Columbia, and that is so important.
It's also notable because it will yield a lot of new cabinet ministers selected by Premier Eby.
I'm glad I'm not the one having to do it, and I'm glad someone else is doing it.
Some familiar faces, including Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon and Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth, are sure to return to cabinet. But many ministers are gone. 5 down to defeat, another 7 didn't run again, meaning 12 out of 27 cabinet ministers have vanished.
Really, what is a generational turnover in the NDP caucus and potentially in cabinet.
And with such a thin majority, just 1 seat, these MLAs know they can't miss important votes and need to remain unified.
There is the added pressure of making sure, that we stay united together and be here as a united front.
A united front with many new members and soon to be new ministers.
Coming up next, the U.S. election could affect Canada more than some may have expected. Welcome back. A controversial plan to eradicate invasive deer on a small BC island is facing more criticism. The next phase of killing the deer involves fencing them in before they're shot. But as CTV's Martin McMahon shows us, that plan is having some unintended consequences, and a warning, the video may be disturbing to some.
It's a difficult image to look at. A deer struggling in netted fencing set up by Parks Canada ahead of Phase 2 of a plan to kill European fallow deer on Sydney Island.
And you can see that it's stressed, it's bucking, trying to get out of the netting. By the time I got there, which was about 20 minutes later, the deer had its head was completely entangled in the net, and it was exhausted and panicked and laying on the ground.
In the video, you can see people pinning the deer as they cut it from the netting before it's able to burst free.
I'm wondering how on earth the BC SPCA could have condoned this project.
The government consulted the SPCA ahead of its eradication plan, and the animal welfare organization tells CTV it's asking Parks Canada questions about this to improve procedures. Locals say it's one of 2 times over the weekend where people felt the need to get involved to free the trapped animals.
Owners that are untrained in wildlife management are having to rescue these poor animals out of the fence, and I mean, it's just horrifying.
The plan has been controversial from the start. From the ballooning costs, at last check the price tag was $12.7 million, to the use of American and New Zealand-based snipers shooting deer from helicopters. Turns out only 84 deer were killed by the sharpshooters during the first phase. Some who have protested against the plan worry many more deer are getting stuck and suffering for extended periods.
They are supposed to be checking the netting every day. I don't know how that is even possible. There are 35 kilometers of netting on this island. 35 kilometers, for some context, is the distance between Vancouver Airport and Horseshoe Bay.
Parks Canada declined our request for an interview into the project aimed at restoring native vegetation, but says in a statement it is investigating these incidents. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
The other big election, of course, is happening across the border, and as Americans elect a new president on Tuesday, new data shows that there's a spike in interest in Canadian real estate. And as CTV's Isabella Zavarisi reports, they're not looking for vacation properties.
We're doing great in Nevada. We're doing great in Arizona.
The American people have a real choice and a very important decision to make.
A choice that has some Americans wanting to weigh their options, taking a peek at Canadian real estate.
It is not surprising in this incredibly divisive American presidential election that they are attracted, at least emotionally, to the concept of getting away from it all.
Data released Wednesday from real estate company Royal LePage found visits by Americans to the site have spiked during the U.S. presidential election.
But particularly in the Donald Trump era, the spike in Americans looking at Canadian homes for sale goes sky high.
In July, Royal LePage recorded one of the highest web traffic days from U.S. visitors, peaking July 15th, the day former President Donald Trump became the Republican nominee.
People have strong opinions about who should lead us, but boy, it's nothing like the divisions you see south of the border.
We do know that general anxiety is high right now.
Jennifer Phillips with Democrats Abroad says the interest from some U.S. citizens wanting to move here doesn't surprise her amidst a contentious election.
We know that LGBTQ rights are on the ballot this year. We know that women's reproductive rights are on the ballot. And, countries like Canada, that's settled law, right?
One immigration lawyer says he's fielding calls daily during the campaign, mostly from those in blue states.
We're calling from Southern California. We don't like what's happening and we want to get out.
Despite the aspirations, lawyer Ryan Neely says the immigration process isn't easy.
When you're talking about does it really convert that interest to do we then see immigrants out of it? I would say that's a pretty low number, but there is a core group of people who are dedicated to doing it.
Voting ends November 5th. The outcome could be the final straw for some Americans looking to make a change. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
The U.S. is also segmented its sights on BC's film and TV industry. Hollywood's struggling entertainment sector is about to get some help in the form of increased tax credits, putting new pressure on Hollywood North. And as CTV's Ben Milcher reports, the re-elected NDP government is also promising a boost for local productions.
The bright lights of Hollywood have lost some luster as the film industry struggles to find its footing in an era of streaming and following some labor strife. The slowdown extends to Hollywood North.
I would call it a recession in our business. The peak was certainly, I think, actually after the pandemic in 2021 and 2022, we saw the business turn on and it went crazy.
California Governor Gavin Newsom recently fired a shot across the bow of other movie-making jurisdictions, promising to double the tax credits doled out by his state.
This is about jobs, this is about investment, and it's about recognizing and closing that the world we invented is now competing against us.
Newsom's pledge follows a campaign promise from recently re-elected Premier David Eby to increase BC's tax credit from 28% to 36%.
The message to film workers in British Columbia, who I know are feeling a lot of the pressures of the big streamers dialing back their budgets and other pressures facing the industry, is that we're in your corner.
An estimated 45,000 people work in the BC film industry, but with only 30 movies and shows in production right now, they're not all on the job. But those folks could be back on set sooner than later, and not just because of the tax credits.
Obviously, the Canadian dollar at the moment is very weak against the US dollar and makes it much more affordable to come to BC to make a movie right now. And we've got to harness that over the next few years while we still have that in our favor.
As the industry looks to rebound globally, insiders say BC is still well positioned to cash in.
BC is one of the best places in the world to make movies. Yeah, we're really good at it.
So expect to see more scenes like this on local streets. Ben Milcher, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast will most likely deal with a few clouds at a low at 2 degrees. The Terrace Kitimat area is said to have a few clouds of their own, while their low sits at 0 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should instead be partly cloudy, as their own low drops to -5 degrees. On the north coast, the week for them will get one sunny day before the rain and clouds set back in, and the high jumps from 7 to 11 degrees. In the Terrace Kitimat area, the upcoming week will also see a sunny day before the clouds and rain come back too, as the high bounces between 4 and 6 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the next week or so will consist of a little more sun, but still plenty of rain and some snow, maybe even as the high shifts from 3 to 5 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is ditching, slushy sections, maintenance work, utility work, construction work, and shoulder maintenance. Highway 118 has slushy sections. Highway 37 has some slippery sections, utility work and roadside brushing. Highway 37A has some slushy sections as well. There is some construction work and bridge maintenance on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, Justin Trudeau recently met with his caucus members after some of them wanted him to quit. Welcome back. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau recently faced his caucus for the first time since some disgruntled Liberals called for him to quit. As CTV's Rachel Aiello reports, Trudeau seemed to satisfy at least some of his MPs by sharing his campaign strategy.
Justin Trudeau faced his MPs for the first time today since rebuffing calls from 24 of them for him to step aside. Heading in, some Liberals were still pushing for a secret ballot vote on Trudeau's leadership.
And I think the question should be asked to the Prime Minister if he supports a secret ballot, and if not, why not?
Others said they wanted clarity on how Trudeau intends to turn the party's fortunes around.
What's the plan to win the next election?
Mr. Bevan. Behind closed doors, new Liberal National Campaign Director Andrew Bevan presented MPs with an election readiness plan, which includes launching new ads soon to draw a contrast with the surging Conservatives.
It's definitely the right step forward. It's just a matter of, now it's about implementation.
In a recent fundraising blast to Liberal loyalists, Bevan vowed to build a winning campaign that re-elects Justin Trudeau and even more Liberal MPs.
I think everyone has total confidence in our campaign director.
The Liberal campaign lead's message seems to have blunted some, but not all of the chatter around ousting Trudeau.
I've been through 5 leaders. This is my 5th leader. Most of the time they're unpopular, but we still manage to win.
And I think there's a lot of people that are still looking for some answers.
Those backing the Prime Minister say he's proven himself to be a strong campaigner before. But this pollster says it will take more than new ads and a unified caucus to have a chance in the next election.
There is still time for the Liberals to be more competitive, but it's going to be very difficult for them to overcome change regardless of what happens.
Trudeau may still have time to get election ready. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said today that he won't let the Bloc and Conservatives call the shots on bringing down the Liberal government. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Ottawa.
There's never a dull moment in the 2024 race for the White House. Both candidates continue to crisscross battleground states. One day after delivering her closing argument in front of a massive crowd, Vice President Harris is playing cleanup following some comments from President Biden. NBC's Bree Jackson reports.
A battle to seal the deal with voters in battleground states.
Well, thank you very much, North Carolina. You are a special group of people.
We have just 6 days left in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime.
Both candidates focusing on their closing message amid controversy. Former President Trump distancing himself from a comedian at his rally who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage.
I don't want anybody making nasty jokes or stupid jokes.
When asked to weigh in on the comics comments, President Biden said this.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
Vice President Harris distancing herself from the president's remarks.
I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for.
The president clarifying his comments on social media, saying he was referring to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed. The White House stressing Mr. Biden was taking aim at the comic's words, not Mr. Trump's supporters. The former president pouncing on Biden's comment.
Remember Hillary? She said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? Please forgive him. for he not knoweth what he said.
All this comes as Americans make their voices heard.
What scares me is, again, like possibly losing my reproductive rights, my right to an abortion.
I voted for Trump last time. I'm going to do it again. The economy sucks at this point.
Voters divided over issues and rhetoric. In Washington, Bree Jackson, NBC News.
And now we turn our attention to how the stock markets are looking as of today compared to yesterday. The Canadian dollar is the same as yesterday. The price of gold is down $51.50. Oil is up 65 cents. Natural gas is down 14 cents. Aluminum is up $5.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 350.92 points. The Venture Index is down 11.97. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 378.08, and NASDAQ is down 497.28. Still ahead, BC municipalities have prepped themselves accordingly for Halloween night. Welcome back. Kids and even eager adults across the province are getting set to go trick-or-treating. Municipalities are also prepared to enforce rules to keep everyone safe. CTV's Craig Krause has more on that and the penalties for rule breakers.
On the eve of Halloween, British Columbians are scrambling to put the finishing touches on their spooky displays as kids across the province prepare to go trick-or-treating.
Tomorrow's the big day. Can't wait.
And this year, similar to that of the past, the celebration will be limited to the ground in Coquitlam.
We did have fireworks in the past, but we don't anymore. Better to be on the safe side.
A total ban in Coquitlam, a move neighboring Port Moody has followed.
There has been a bylaw amendment in Port Moody banning fireworks. That's the sale, the possession, and the discharge of them.
Unless you have a permit or face a $500 fine. Rules and fines that apply in most cities across the Lower Mainland, whether it's for Halloween, Diwali, or any celebration.
Now the minimum fines are from $100, it's gone up to $400, and the maximum fines have gone from $5,000 to $50,000 for serious violations.
It's a $1,000 fine for each offense. For the selling, the buying, or discharging, each one can come with $1,000.
Since banning fireworks in Vancouver 3 years ago, the fire department has seen the number of damage caused by fireworks on Halloween plummet from 17 in 2020 to just a few in recent years.
Thankfully, I think a lot of people are understanding the impacts of having explosives from people just who aren't trained in it.
Fireworks aside, there's options to celebrate the night safely, including Bolesky's haunted attraction.
I think it'll be busy tomorrow night. It's not supposed to rain, so see how it goes.
Craig Crowe, CTV News, Coquitlam.
A carelessly discarded cigarette caused the fire that damaged 3 homes and displaced their residents in Vancouver's Strathcona neighborhood this month. Vancouver Fire Rescue Services said in a statement posted to social media that the cigarette had been discarded behind one of the homes. The service says it ignited combustible materials and the fires spread. It says smoking materials should only be discarded if a metal container or in water or sand and never around vegetation. That's all of our news for now. From all of us here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.